Welcome. I'm Dr. Jamie Mathias of the Austin ISD Board of Trustees and also Executive Director of MASBA, the Mexican American School Boards Association. As our friends from throughout the state begin to log on, I'd like to provide a brief overview of our time today for this conversation co-sponsored by MASBA and Leadership ISD. In a moment, I'll introduce our MASBA president, who will in turn introduce today's speaker. Before that, I'd like to draw your attention to a few details concerning this GoToWebinar platform. If you'd like to raise your hand to be acknowledged to speak, simply press the raise hand button, which looks like a hand with an up arrow. I'll give you a moment to find the raise hand button. If you'd like to try it now, you can practice raising and lowering your hand. Very good. You can also type your questions in the questions tab. I'll give you a moment to find the questions tab on the right-hand side. And we encourage conversation through the chat tab. Take a moment to find the chat tab as well. Before I introduce our MASBA president, I'd like to share with you our first poll. Your district's schools have likely been closed for over 3 weeks now. How would you rate the response of your district to this pandemic? We'll give you a brief moment to respond to that poll. And as you do so, it's my great pleasure to introduce our MASBA president. He serves as the president of the Fort Worth ISD Board of Trustees, the 5th largest district in Texas. At the state level, he serves on the board of directors of the Texas Association of School Boards, and at the national level, he serves as chair of the Council of Urban Boards of Education. In his day job, he serves as chief of governance and leadership for Leadership ISD, the co-sponsor of this conversation series. Please join me in welcoming our MASBA board president, Jacinto Ramos Jr.
Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Jacinto Ramos Jr., as Dr. Mathias just said. It is a pleasure to be with you today. Quick overview of how we've gotten to this point. On March 16th, the MASBA officers discussed COVID-19 over our executive meeting. And then on March 25th, the MASBA board discussed it as a whole. We noticed a pattern of board members having the opportunity to share what is going on in their local districts, what are the successes and what are the challenges. And then on the following day, on March 26th, we invited 15 trustees to pilot a statewide conversation, and we had 27 log in and call in to have the briefing with us. Some of the questions that we raised were, how are you holding up? Another question was, what do you believe we as school board members can do right now? Another was, what do you think we should be preparing for in the coming months? And what would a group like this look like for support for one another? And so the questions raised by the attendees in that conversation is, how do we give our superintendents and their administrators the space that they need to respond to this crisis and still hold them accountable? Particularly, many of our superintendent performance indicators are now out of the window. And another set of questions was, should our boards continue with business as usual? And or what should be our focus as school board members during these coming days and weeks? Another question was, what are our hopes for the superintendent and our districts, particularly if our country follows a curve similar to the curves of other countries and our school can't reopen anytime soon? And then one of the other questions that led to a series of proclamations around the state is, what emergency powers should we cede or not cede to our superintendents? And how do we ensure that this does not present an obstacle in the future? When proponents of the privatization of public education suggest that districts operated just fine when Board of Trustees took a step back during this pandemic. So there was a series of conversations that kept coming about, and we thought, why not partner as Leadership ISD and MASBA to expand our width from just the 15 that we piloted with that ended up being 27. So the essential question ends up being, how might we as school board members govern in the midst of crisis and model good governance during these challenging times? So I am privileged category of being able to work with Dr. Drew Howard through the Lone Star Governance Pipeline for coaching and support system. So I was able to be on a call with him and a number of others around the state last week, where he in essence was addressing a lot of these questions. And so we thought, why not partner with Dr. Drew Howard and TEA to be able to enter this space with us so that most of us, so all of us can have that opportunity to be able to learn and grow from what we can do as good board members. Understanding that there are certain aspects of our role that are hindered and other opportunities that might be presenting themselves. Districts that shared that there was inequities that were rising to the top, and then other districts that were sharing the success that they had because they were able to make bold moves earlier in the year and the years before all of this happened. So there are districts that are doing really well, and then there's some districts that are having some challenges. So just an opportunity for us to continue to have the conversation. So my friends, we're going to bring Dr. Drew Howard onto the call so that he can share with us what he shared with a lot of the Lone Star governance coaches and board presidents and superintendents. Dr. Drew Howard, thank you for being with us today. Thank you for taking time to join us. And I think you might have some news that you might want to share with us as well. We'll talk to you here in a bit. Dr. Howard, are you on the call now?
Yes, can everybody hear me? I think I was able to unmute.
We can hear you fine.
Yes, sir.
All right, perfect. Well, first of all, I just want to say thank you for the opportunity to be amongst some of our great school leaders and visit with you and share with you this morning. It's a privilege of mine to be able to look around the state and see the how quickly people have come together to try to take care of the needs of our students. This is as we all know, an unprecedented situation that we haven't had to deal with in education, at least in a very long time. And I just want to preface some of the things I say with some positives that as we try to overcome the challenges that we have, I think this is going to be an opportunity that we look back upon and we say, look how much we learned, look how much we've grown, and look at the opportunities that are being opened to us as educators through this. And if we don't take the knowledge and the skills that we learn through this time and move forward with those, then I think we're going backwards. A lot of challenges and a lot of things that I think we're going to learn through this time with how to deal with equality, but more importantly with equity amongst our students, and how we provide one, for the safety and security of our students and our families and our communities at this time, and then two, how do we continue that continuity of education and still provide that education to our students with the challenges that we face with being isolated from each other. So those are kind of the areas that I want to speak on. But first of all, when you think about a time like this, where's the school board fit in? Because a lot of the decisions, a lot of the day-to-day operations that are taking place, the big changes are not necessarily school board decisions. These are decisions of why you hired your superintendent to handle these day-to-day operational decisions. But at the same time, we have to create accountability, and we have to maintain that governance to make the decisions that fall upon a school board, and at the same time make sure that the superintendent, the people we trust these operational actions with, are still accountable to the decisions that they make, and be supportive as a team. I know we say team of 8 many times, but that's so important during this time, is to be that team and be supportive. So normally in your school board meetings, you would have time to reflect on what's the progress of these goals that we've set. How are we moving forward? Are the decisions that we're making, are the plans that we have in place delivering the results that we want to see? And as Cinto pointed out a while ago, that a lot of these are thrown out the window. A lot of goals are around the STAR tests. A lot of goals are around performance measures that may not be able to be, the data may not be able to be gathered at least as reliable and accurate as we want it to be, just to measure those goals accurately and responsibly. So the two things that I think boards need to focus on more than any other at this time is to create some basically emergency priorities. And the two emergency priorities that rise to the top in my mind are, one, um, maintaining the safety and security and well-being of our students, and then how is the school providing the continuation of educational services to students outside of the normal school operations that we're used to. School boards may have more emergency operations than that. It's so difficult to put things into one or two priorities because every situation is different around Texas at this time. But I believe those two priorities, staying focused on the safety and security of our students and the continuation of educational services being provided to our students and the equity around those, are the two main pieces that boards can focus on this at this time. Normally, like I was speaking about earlier, is you would spend time getting reports, looking at data, holding the superintendent and their team accountable to delivering the results that you've set for the vision and the values of your community as board members. But that looks a lot different right now as well. So what could monitoring this process look like in a board meeting? And that's a question that I've gotten and received several times. But at this time, I think that looks a lot more like a conversation than it does a report given and being received. But a conversation around how are things going? What are the safety and security needs of our students? The board members asking the superintendent questions about what are the plans to continue education? What are the plans to maintain equity amongst students who some have internet access and others do not? What about special education students? How are we going to provide for the needs of our language learners, our students with learning disabilities? They have 504 services. All of those different questions are great for board members to ask the superintendent and to have a conversation at this time. I think it's very, very important to be understanding that maybe not all of those answers are gathered. I believe we're way much further ahead than we were 2 weeks ago, but 2 weeks from now, I think we'll be saying the same thing. But the board to really focus on those emergency priorities, especially safety and security of students, providing for their needs, food, possibly in some communities, I see the school being used for daycare services for the essential employees in that community. You know, those type of values that are within your community as a board member, maintaining the conversation around how's the school providing for those student needs, and then also maintaining that continuity of education to where understanding that, you know, parents are at home, teachers are at home with their own kids and then still preparing lessons for those that they're teaching. Is that through a platform that's online? Is that through packets that are delivered and picked up? How's that communication taking place within the community, within the school system, and maintaining constant communication? You know, those components all have a big part of that continuity of education. So those are where in a time of emergency like we're facing right now, that the board can step into having conversations and maintaining that open dialogue with their superintendent, making sure that we are continuing to move forward to meet those emergency priorities. And then down the line, then I think it becomes more appropriate for the board to reevaluate with the superintendent the goals of the school system, the progress measures that are in place to measure throughout the year. Are we accomplishing those goals? Because it may look different uh, moving forward than it did a month and a half ago. But at the same time, those goals may be the exactly where they need to be. So spending time evaluating those goals and the progress measures down the line of, are they still aligned to the vision and values of our community, is an essential function that the board will need to take to maintain focus on moving the school system towards its mission and maintaining those values. One other thing that that I would like to just hit on, and then Cinto, I'll go any direction that you would like if you have specific questions to kind of address. But maintaining that communication, I believe, is very, very important, and I want to focus on a monitoring calendar that may have been in place in the past, or consistent communication of how the board's going to communicate progress that it's making as that the school system's making as it moves forward. And a lot of school systems use a monitoring calendar to do that, to communicate to the community, to the staff, to the superintendent. This is when we're going to monitor our progress. And I think setting up something very similar to where everybody will understand, here's when some communications are going out. It may be a weekly communication. There may be communications that have to be given out at different times because circumstances are constantly changing. But I think delivering from a board standpoint, delivering some consistency to our community in a time that is very inconsistent is an important piece as a leadership group that we need to focus on, of how are we going to deliver out consistent communication through this time, because everybody's hearing a lot of different things. And I think this is an important time for the board to set up good communication in collaboration with the superintendent and let the community know that we are here together and that we are a team of 8 or a team of 10, whatever your circumstances may be. But we're going to be here together and put out a unified message of, here's the priorities and here's how we're going to continue to go about serving our students and families, even in a chaotic time.
Thank you, Drew. It looks like we have a question by Ruben Cortez. Ruben, are you here? You there?
Hello?
Sir.
Hello? Can you hear me?
We can hear
Yes.
you.
Okay, good. Yeah, I actually didn't have a question. I was when Jamie said tap the raise your hand, take your hand down. I was just practicing with it, but I just wanted to comment. This, as was stated a moment ago. What's going on is unprecedented in not only our communities in the state, but in this country. And those of you as trustees, I just I want to applaud some of the work that you guys are doing. Be proactive about some of the concerns that Cinto talked about when he opened the meeting, about how school choice groups are going to try to use this as an opportunity. But I think the reality and what history will show is that those of you in trustee positions have probably called a series of emergency meetings or special called board meetings, probably through virtual means to continue to allow the administration the discretion that they need to operate their districts. I mean, we have a shelter-in-place order in our community across the state, and what that means is that our kids are having to adapt to their new normal. I think TEA is calling it at-home schools. I have 4 kids in my home right now in different rooms in this house, online, doing online instruction with teachers. And a lot of that is made possible because of some of the leadership that you guys provide when you allow administrations to use up district resources to buy the technology necessary. I think one of the things that we're going to be able to identify after this is the gaps that exist in terms of technology, and maybe as a state we'll be able to learn some lessons from this and figure out how we can fix those gaps. Some of you guys as districts are giving time and a half to food service personnel. You know, for those of you that have been on the daily calls with the Commissioner of Education and superintendents from across the state, and those of you that know me know that, you know, I have a lot of areas where I disagree with Commissioner Morath's leadership. But what's going on right now with this COVID-19, the way he has acted, the way he has stepped up and has been helping our schools, the way all agency staff at the TEA have stepped up to do what they need to work with other state agencies and federal agencies to get certain guidelines and rules modified and changed and get all these waivers in place. There's so many things that go on. I have been supremely impressed with Mike Morath's leadership, our Commissioner of Education, during this crisis, and keeping everybody as well informed and trying to be as transparent as possible. I mean, some of the things that you all probably hadn't even thought about is special education and the ARDS and the accommodations and all the things that are having to be dealt with right now. You've got, you know, everything is going to get interrupted, from lack of proms to figuring out virtual graduations. I don't anticipate that any of us, if any of us, go back to school this year. That's just me looking at it. But what is happening, at least in my home and some of these online classrooms that I've been a part of, and companies like Google who are offering Google Classroom for free through July statewide for anybody that wants it, that they're offering free professional development for any school districts. Other companies like them, Apple, Microsoft, are offering similar situations while they're going on, and you guys as trustees doing what you need to pull the resources that you need and give the discretion. I've seen caps lifted for superintendents from that $50,000 threshold spending before you got to go to the board, lifted to $500,000 because they don't have time to call a board meeting, wait 72 hours, call an emergency meeting, wait 24 hours. They have to make decisions on the fly, and you guys have really stepped up. I just wanted to tell you guys that I'm very grateful for your all's leadership as well. What I get to see as I've been talking to school districts is just, I mean, I can't say it enough. What's happening today is it's scary. You know, we had a scare in our home. My daughter came in contact with somebody who tested positive, and so they made her quarantine. Thank God they've lifted that on our kid in our home, and so we're fine. But this can strike very close to home, and we just need to be very vigilant. And I ask that you all just think about these gaps that could be created with our students and figure out how to best make sure that those gaps don't exist when our kids go back, whether it's for possible summer school or summer college or back in the fall. But try to create this new normal and give your teachers the latitude that they need. Some school districts, I will say, I think took it a little too far. Some of them are requiring the teachers be made available till like 8 or 9 p.m. You don't make them available. You don't require them to be available for those hours during the regular school day. I don't think under a stay-at-home and on a virtual or online platform that you should require them to do that either. We need to value their time as well, but within the means of what they need to do. If you're providing them the technology that they need, we want to make sure that our kids don't have big gaps when they come back in, probably in the fall, or like I said, for summer school. Jamie, thank you for putting this event on. For those of you that aren't tuning into the commissioner's daily call, I would encourage you guys to get the information from TEA and tune in. You're going to hear everything about the most granular things that need to be modified that you guys probably, and I hadn't even thought about once these conversations started. And I find myself learning something new about what is going on in terms of what the agency is doing to help our schools to finish out the year to transition to this new at-home schools.
Ruben, thank you for bringing that up, man. I mean, I think that's a good opportunity to ask Dr. Howard. Dr. Howard, how can we chime into those calls to get those updates from the commissioner's office? Is that open to everyone?
The calls for the commission, the information, excuse me, for the commissioner's calls has been provided to all of the superintendents that are on the listserv around the state. So if your superintendent does not have that, then we do not have the correct information for that superintendent on the listserv at TEA. But that information for those calls should have been provided to all superintendents, and board members, I'd say more than welcome of getting that information and joining those calls. The calls are more of a one-way because of the number of volume of people on the call. It's really just the commissioner giving out daily information, but a great resource for getting information out. And I'll just share this too. It's on the TEA website. If you have not gone to this website, but it's tea.texas.gov/coronavirus. So tea.texas.gov/coronavirus. And all of the resources that are discussed on those daily calls are provided on that website for you to access. So there's information for everybody, from state and federal programs to board actions to board trainings. And I'll just take this time to Ruben Cortez, I want to say a special thank you to you and Dr. Ellis and the State Board of Education for their work with my department in particular in finding ways to relinquish some stress of requiring to get board trainings done at this time. So, and other things that are norms at this time of the year, so that we can spend the time focusing on what's best for our students and our communities at this time.
Thank you, Dr. Howard. Looks like we have a question by Garland ISD's Linda Griffin. Miss Linda, are you there?
Trustee Griffin, you're unmuted. Not sure what's happening there. Oh, there we go.
Okay, yeah, because you had to unmute me. Okay. My question is to Mr. Howard. The two priorities that you've given us is excellent, and I think that that's what has come to all of our minds initially. And then when the superintendent, and I failed to get your name, I'm sorry, talked about the various policies that have been revised so that superintendents can do their work. My question is, how do you, what's the best positive way to share with your other board members that although we're meeting virtually and it appeared that things are normal, things are not normal. And therefore, the things that hit the agenda is not of importance right now because it does not rise to that occasion. And so many of us as board members have not been able to get out of our heads that our goals that we have established, that's not where we are right now. So what do you have any advice of what's the best positive way to begin that conversation?
Yeah, that's a great question. And you know, talking with board members all across the state, we have a lot of different mindsets, and I think the best thing you can do is have action if you need to do this, but take action as a board to suspend the current monitoring of your goals, so that way it's board action, and then focus on the priorities that you have at hand. And then that way it's more of a conversation. It's not that we're going to expect reports for the superintendent to come in and how many students are doing this and how many are closing gaps right now. You know, it's a lot in a lot of different places, but I do believe that monitoring and spending time in a conversation of how many of our students now have access if we're going online, how many are not, what are the needs, and then as a board you can act to provide for those needs that the superintendent would have. And that may be, like what was stated earlier, changing some policies to where the superintendent has more ease of access to funds, to purchase new equipment, to move buses around, to provide internet service in different locations of the community. You know, all sorts of different actions the superintendent could take. But if need be, I believe it's a conversation for the board members to have in their next meeting is, let's take action to suspend our current monitoring practices. And during this time of emergency, it's just during this time of emergency, doesn't mean that we're not going to go back to, hopefully go back to normal sooner than later. But during this time of emergency, we're going to focus on these emergency priorities and these priorities only. And then we're going to take actions that relate to these priorities as a board. And then during that conversation, when you're monitoring that or those priorities, that's when the superintendent can bring about, here's our challenges, here's what we're trying to move for, here's the actions that I need the board to take. And then therefore your suspending of policies or movement of authorities to the superintendent from the board are directly tied to the emergency priorities and the needs of the students to continue to provide for their safety and continuing education for them at home as best as possible. I know I kind of talked in circles there, but I appreciate the question. Hopefully that gave a little bit of an answer.
Thank you, Dr. Howard. And then just as a reminder, if you want to ask a question, feel free to use the raising of the hand. We've got 3 questions coming up. We have Trish Bode, will be followed by Ann Sung, and then Kay Douglas. So Trish.
Hi. Yes, mine was just earlier about Mr. Cortez was talking about time and a half that some districts are doing, and I was wondering if you meant that that was something Morath had done, or if he was going to give more information on that.
Yeah. Jamie, is that for me? Jamie.
No, I think that question was more towards Dr. Howard from the TA side.
Actually, Ruben Cortez started us off talking about some of the great things he's seen TEA and Commissioner Morath doing. And he mentioned that some districts were giving time and a half for food service personnel. And I was just curious if you had any more comments on that, or if that was just an example.
No, that's not something that the agency is doing. That's something that I've seen local school boards do. I've seen some school districts, if you have a personnel, whether it's a a security officer, IT people who are obviously having to maintain your IT systems, your food service personnel, anybody who you're having to come in who is a classified staff. I've seen districts, board of trustees approve that they're getting paid, because not everybody's working, right? So you only have essential staff. So everybody who, at least in the districts that I'm aware of, in my SBOE district, for the large part of them they're all paying their employees even though they're at home. So if you're a paraprofessional, you may not be doing anything, but you're still receiving compensation. But if you're working, if you're physically in the building, or if you're helping with food service, you're getting paid time and a half, right? So you're getting paid plus you're getting half time that the boards have authorized. And I've seen that with a lot of school boards. They're giving some kind of supplemental pay to some of the admin and certified staff that are doing. But again, those are local decisions. That is not anything that the Commissioner of Education is doing. That's something you as a board can do or offer. Hope that answers your question.
Thank you, Ruben. Appreciate you bringing that forward. Next, we've got a question from Ann Sung in Houston ISD.
Hello, can you hear me? Hello?
Yes.
Okay. Thank you so much for organizing this. And Dr. Howard, my question is to you. Thank you so much for coming and speaking with us today. So the Houston ISD board is going to be considering emergency priorities at our meeting scheduled this Thursday. One question I have is about how long these priorities should extend, right? We're coming up on the end of this school year, such as it is, but I see a need for us to pay attention to these priorities through the summer. There's possible disruption in the 2020-21 school year. So how long do you think we should adopt these emergency priorities, and how do you see them evolving over the next months and year?
Yes, thank you for the question. Great question as well. I would suggest for at least the next quarter, the next 3 months, to set the emergency priorities and let that be what's evaluated over your next 3 board meetings. I think that is a fluid situation. If the board feels like in 2 months from now we can start migrating back more to normal, then that's great. But I would suggest for the next 3 months these emergency priorities take precedence, and then evaluate it at that 3-month period at the end of next quarter, because it could very likely be extended. One of the things to keep in mind is a lot of our goals, especially academic goals, are aligned to STAR and other assessments that are given beginning, middle, end of the year. Those could be disrupted as well, and have an effect on the beginning of the year, next year's results. As much as and as hard as our schools are working, nothing replaces our teachers in the classroom, and nothing is going to replace our kids in front of our teachers daily. So mitigating those gaps as much as possible is going to be a high priority during this time. And I think Ruben mentioned that earlier, but mitigating those gaps so that when we reevaluate at the beginning of next year, I'm going to be very optimistic, and will remain so, because I think it's school will start as planned at the beginning of next year. I'm not so optimistic about finishing or going back to school to finish out this year, but different places are in different situations. But I do think there is going to be a time of reflection, like I mentioned earlier at the beginning, of the board reevaluating the goals and the progress measures with their superintendent, so that they are adjusted appropriately to compensate and be realistic and achievable because of the time that we're going to be away from our teachers.
Thank you, Dr. Howard. Next question comes from Kate Douglas.
There we go, Kay. Welcome, Kay. President Ramos, I'm not hearing Kay Douglas.
You're not hearing me?
Oh, there we go. Okay.
Okay. I'm not that bright. You know that. It's a two-part thing. You unmute, you mute me, and then I unmute me.
There you go.
But I had a real brief comment in response to Trustee Linda Griffin, because her question actually had to do with sort of board dynamics. And I just wanted to say that even though the training requirements have been put off till September 30th, outside of the training idea, there still has to be team building that's ongoing, because we're all making this up as we go and finding our way as we go. And we all have situations at home and at our offices and all of these things that we're seeing. So we still need to have an avenue to talk as trustees about fears and concerns about not just whether students are eating, are they safe, you know, how is our staff doing? So if you could work in a way, either in a formal meeting through your virtual meeting, you know, some time for that, or just reaching out to individual trustees, not to talk about district business, but to talk about how they're doing. So that would be my recommendation, is that we still show empathy and we still reach out to team members within or without a meeting setting so that they have a chance to voice those concerns.
By the way, my friends, that's Kay from Casby, a good friend and someone who knows her stuff really, really well. Kay, thank you for bringing in the humanity to the crisis of not forgetting that we're all servants to the community. We're all on here with the best of intentions to serve our young people, and knowing that checking in with one another is absolutely a great idea. Next, we're going to have Jesse Rodriguez, and we'll be followed by Armando Rodriguez.
Trustee Rodriguez. President Ramos, maybe we'll come back to Jesse Rodriguez. I'll have to send him a message and see if we can work out some technical details here.
Okay, next we have Armando Rodriguez, and Armando will be followed by Don Miller.
Okay, thanks. No problem.
Welcome, Trustee Rodriguez.
Yes. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, Armando Rodriguez from Canoteo ISD in El Paso. And one of the questions that I had in regards to graduation requirements, I know some of the other states across the country are actually allowing this year's graduation to continue without any penalties, or looking at the previous semester. What is TA looking in regards to addressing this issue? Many of our kids are already going through, you know, many situations at home, and we're trying to, you know, do remote distance learning. But how do we really address this issue so we can move forward and then hopefully start working on the following year? Mr. Howard?
Yes, yeah. Sorry, I have to unmute myself. There is the website that I pointed you to earlier, and I believe it's in the notes section. So there is it's tea.texas.gov/coronavirus. There are resources available there to help you as a board help decide, you know, what steps you need to take for your high school students. I hesitate to throw out some specifics because it looks different in different situations, and it is still a fluid situation, but that resource will be one that I would point you towards to find information out. And then Mr. Cortez mentioned earlier the commissioner's call. Those are details that are updated. And GPA, graduation, all of those have been topics that have been discussed on those calls. So information is on the website, and then I would encourage you to be on those calls because it's still ever evolving and ever changing. I know that wasn't an answer, so I apologize for that, but there is some guidance on the website that could help you.
Thank you, Drew. Yeah, we definitely would encourage you to go to the link, and then our friends from TASB that are on the call as well, they also on their website have links and resources for us, for trustees and school board members. We're going to try to check back in. Jesse Rodriguez, are you able to join us now to ask your question?
Yeah, Cinto, can you hear me? Hello,
Yes,
can you
sir.
hear me? Oh, all right, great. It's not a question, it's really more of a statement. I know State Board member Ruben Cortes referenced the fact that Google and Microsoft are offering free access. I just wanted to let my fellow board members know, and this is something that's come up here in Grapevine, Colleyville from parents, and I just wanted to share this with fellow board members as well, is that a lot of your educational partners and publishers are also offering access to a lot of their online instructional resources at no cost. A lot of them are through the end of the school year, and some are into the summer. So as more and more districts are having to embrace distance learning and remote learning, school districts are going to be looking for resources. And I just wanted to let my colleagues know that there are a lot of publishers out there that are providing the resources at no cost to school districts right now for that purpose. So I just wanted to pass that along.
Thank you, Jesse. I appreciate you for that. Next, we have Don Miller. Don, do you have a question or a comment?
I do. So I have a two-part question. One that came up with the colleges and I mean our high school seniors, and I know we're working on our end in terms of the requirements for them to actually complete on our end. Are there any conversations going on, whether they be regionally, nationally, with some of the colleges and universities to try and work with that acceptance side? Because we've had some of our high school parents, the senior parents, really in kind of a panic mode about how will their children now qualify for acceptance. So I didn't know, and I hadn't looked at the link to see if there's a conversation about what are we doing to work collaboratively with the universities. That's one question. My second question is, I heard you guys mention in the beginning that this may be an advantage for charters. If you could elaborate a bit on that, and if so, how do we mitigate that advantage? I guess I was thinking they were at a disadvantage because most of them aren't as technologically adept as we are in terms of for their communities. So just kind of elaborate on that for me.
Yeah, well, Cinto, I'll take part of the first one if I can. I put in, and I don't know if I put this in the right spot, but in the where to type the questions, I put a link to the FAQ on graduation. So that was updated as of March 30th. So I think that will be a really good resource that maybe we could make available to everybody that helps answer, concerns on GPA, credit, everything of graduation. I will say, different organizations, the College Board, organizations, NCAA, UIL, everyone you can think of is having conversations and how to deal with issues with simple things, Don, like pass fail, and how that goes into effect of eligibility when they go into college. If you do pass fail grades versus GPA, all sorts of different little nuances that we haven't had to think of before. So all of those are being processed and done. I don't have any specifics to be able to give you off the top of my head that I know of any decisions being made, but I do want to reassure you that public ed, college, higher ed, private schools, everybody is communicating right now on how to best bridge a lot of these little asterisks that we didn't think about in the past that we're having to think about now. So, and also just want to say, I hope things are well down in Cedar Hill.
Thank you, Dr. Howard. So looks like our next question, it might be our last question for the day, is going to be Corinne French of Valley View ISD.
Yes, I'm wondering, I know a lot of, can you hear me? Can everyone hear me?
We can hear you.
Good afternoon, Corinne French. Thank you, Cinto. Thank you, Dr. Mathias, Dr. Howard, everyone on the call. I know our district, we're very small, very rural and not prepared. Our teachers are doing a great job and our administrators are doing a great job. We did a technology survey that asked about devices, and cell phones were considered a device for learning. I'm wondering if there's going to be a place that we can get all the information to see how many students in Texas truly do have access to online learning.
I'll jump in again, Cinto. That's a great question. I wish I had an answer to give for that, but I think that is one of the challenges that every local school system is facing, is being able to determine, are kids able to access, who is able to access, how do they get access if they don't have access, to provide that equality and equity that we need to continue on that continuity of education to all of our students. I will say, from a positive note, the superintendents that I've been able to visit with around the state are doing a remarkable job in being very creative and finding ways to provide education ongoing for our students. We all know nothing's going to replace the teacher in the classroom in front of our kids, but how do we do the next best thing? And then how do we begin to judge, are we being effective or not in what we're doing? Right now, it's trying to get that access to everybody. And then we can start worrying about, are we being effective in how we're providing that access? But that's something that I think will just take some time for us to be able to gather data and information. But to one who has access, and then how effective were our methods during this time, and again, staying on the positive side of things, I think that's going to be a great learning opportunity for us a year from now, 2 years from now. What methods were effective, what weren't, and then how do we use those effective methods to better serve students? I know that's not what's on the top of our minds right now, but that is a very big challenge when it comes to providing access to the internet for our students that don't have it if we're going to online learning. So I will say there's been some creative ways of putting hotspots on buses and going and parking buses at different parts of the community, setting up places for parents to come and be able to park their cars for kids to get on access. Again, the parents have time and the availability to do that because they're working too, so it's an ongoing struggle. But we would love to, I know all of us on this call, all the different organizations would love to continue to partner with you and your school districts if you have trouble with those, to help try to figure out the best means to provide for those kids.
Thank you, Dr. Howard. I appreciate you more than we can express. On behalf of Mazba Leadership ISD, thank you for joining us today, bringing your expertise and the information to all of us today. To piggyback off of your comments, no doubt right now is the time for those of us on the call and those of our friends and colleagues that we serve with to be mindful of the adaptive challenges that we have in front of us. It's an opportunity to model that adaptive leadership, as you described, with our school systems going online, how we're feeding our students, gauging how to get access to resources and support systems. I think a comment made last week that stuck with me was the increase in domestic violence that's going on at home, the consciousness we have to have of the mental health of our students, our families, and our entire community, and then also that of ourselves, making sure that we're taking care of ourselves during this time. Next week, I want to make sure that we note we're going to have Dr. Phil Gore from TASB joining us for the call. There's a book that you might be mindful of. It's called Balanced Governance by Alderberry and Gore. It's one that I reference pretty often. I love the commentaries, and I think it fits us right now as to, am I a disengaged board member at this time, or am I one that's leaning into the work, knowing what the balance looks like for me right here, right now, knowing that questions or maybe being overly involved could distract the superintendent and administrative team from actually doing their jobs. I think those are the conversations that we want to continue to have, and I know Dr. Phil Gore will be able to speak to that next week. So we'll have these calls weekly on Mondays at noon. We started on time, and we definitely plan to end on time. We do want to ask you that you please take a moment to complete the survey you'll receive when you exit this call. It'll definitely provide us feedback to help us to continue to improve. And can't thank you all enough. We had over 50 folks on this call today. Again, Dr. Gore, thank you very much. Appreciate your leadership, and look forward to having our guest, Dr. Phil Gore, next week. Dr. Mathias, appreciate all the hard work that you've done today. Everyone stay safe, and we hope to see you back next Monday. Everyone, let's go back out there into our community, and, or I should say back in our home, and work for our community and practice some good governance. Take care, my friends.
Tremendous. Have a great day.